Hello boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and today I would like to talk about Superman 2. Christopher Reeve's Superman 2. I watched Superman 1, and then I watched Superman 2, and then I fell in love with Superman 2 way harder than I fell in love with Superman 1, because Superman 2 did what Superman 1 couldn't do, and what I had some gripes about in Superman 1, they fixed it real quick in Superman 2. What could that be? What could that be? Well, first off, let's get it off right off the bat. Lex Luthor kicked off Otis real quick. That boy was locked up in behind bars and left Otis behind bars with his woman, with his girlfriend who took him out in a hot air balloon. Boy, this movie was something else. So this movie, Superman 1 was a backstory of Clark Kent, of Superman, and Superman 2 delves into the love story of Lois Lane and Clark Kent and Superman a lot more than what happened in the first film. The first film, their relationship kind of felt weird. It felt odd. They sort of felt, it really felt, surface level. And I think you really see that in the second film of how surface level that feeling of love was. Because this film deals with love and attachment and how Lois Lane fell in love with Superman, and then in this movie we see that Superman loses his powers and Lois Lane seemingly doesn't love a man who doesn't show off the way that was able to. And I'm getting ahead of myself. So this movie starts off with Lois Lane in Paris. I don't know what the heck she's doing in Paris. She's doing an interview with Daily Bugle. I said Daily Bugle, with the Daily Planet. And these people in Paris are getting this nuclear bomb, and she needs to be saved because she's in trouble. So Superman learns that she's in Paris with this terrorists event, and he takes this nuclear bomb and throws it into space. And in the first movie, we learned that when Krypton, when Krypton got destroyed, Clark Kent's father was able to banish General Zod. I almost said King Zod. He was able to banish General Zod and his two minions in the Phantom Zone and throw it in space. And so it happens that when Superman throws this nuclear bomb into space, the Phantom Zone, General Zod was in the Phantom Zone glass thing floating in space and was hit by the waves of this nuclear blast. And conveniently enough, that's all that takes. That's the only thing apparently that is able to break the glass. So they got freed from the Phantom Zone, and then they come to Earth. So they're wreaking havoc on Earth, and General Zod wants to rule this planet. They start making a ruckus, and they start trying to take over the world, and they essentially successfully takes over the United States. And throughout this, we learn that Clark Kent and Superman wasn't around at all, because Clark Kent was with Lois Lane on this trip, on this Daily Planet trip. And throughout this, we see that they start to fall in love, and Lois starts to piece together that Clark Kent is Superman, because whenever Superman shows up, Clark Kent is not around. So we see that they start to develop this relationship, and Superman's ready to lose it all for Lois Lane, someone that he seemingly loves, and they have this sort of connection with each other. So he takes her back to the Fortress of Solitude, and they basically they get freak nasty real quick. But before he's able to make this commitment to her, he goes to his AI of his old parents and stuff, and his mother essentially tells him that if he is going to be in love with Lois Lane, then he must be of like the humans. He must give away his Kryptonian powers that he's able to utilize over with the Earth's rotation and their gravity with the Earth's yellow sun and whatnot, giving him the powers. So he's able to stand inside this little capsule that takes away his powers. So he does that so he can be with Lois Lane, because apparently that he's not able to be with Lois Lane unless he listens to his AI mother that's died. And which is the weirdest thing, is that why would he be so loyal to this if, you know, he was already sort of defying his father's wishes in the last movie, which is probably one of the biggest kind of is in this movie, but everything else around this movie was just fantastic. So he decides to do this, and so he isn't Superman anymore, and they start making some sweet loving in a fortress of solitude. So during this, General Zod is making a muck, and we see that Lex Luthor is trying to cement himself between this sort of revolution of General Zod and kind of just taking everything for himself and asserting himself in the Earth, because no one can stop three Supermen essentially. So they're just using their powers and abusing them throughout this whole film. And Lex Luthor gives himself leverage with General Zod and his crew, his two henchmen, and he tells them that I'm able to find what you need to take over the world, and they need to take out Superman in order to take over this planet, because Superman is its protector. So he's able to guide them toward Lois Lane, which is Superman's kryptonite essentially in this movie. So that happens, but before that happens, we see that Superman, or Clark Kent at this time, isn't Superman anymore. So they go out to this diner, and he gets beat up in this diner because Lois Lane, this guy starts talking to Lois Lane type way, and so he's like, Superman's like, hey yo, you better chill talking about a girl, and he gets his ass beat. He gets beat down, and Lois Lane's like, oh my gosh, I didn't fall in love with you, I fell in love with Superman. And that was some heart-wrenching things, heart-wrenching stuff. Superman, Clark Kent, Superman wants to be with this woman, and this woman don't even really want to be with him unless he's super. That goes to show you how these women be like sometimes. And so this movie is just like, hey, don't fall in love. Love is powerful and love is great, but sometimes love is pain, and love isn't what you really want it to be once things starts to change, and once love starts to sort of dwindle in a relationship. And that's sort of one of the biggest themes that I took from this movie personally, because we sort of see it throughout the remainder of this film. So Superman realizes that he's been gone this whole time playing lovey-dovey with Lois Lane, and Lois Lane loves Superman, and he's not Superman. But we see that the world needs Superman the most, but he's not even Superman, because General Zod and Lex Luthor is taking over America, taking over the world. So this is like one of the most hopeless points of the film, where Superman really needs to find it in himself, like what his priorities need to be like. And so he's like, dang, I need to be super again. So he goes back to the Fortress of Solitude, leaves Lois Lane behind, and he devotes himself to being Superman, and he's able to get his powers back, and he confronts General Zod and the two minions. There's this girl and this one dumb guy, and they're fighting in Metropolis. and there's seemingly nothing he can do. Lex Luthor leads General Zod to the Daily Planet so they can take Lois Lane captive, so they can goad Superman into showing up and fighting him. So that happens, and then there's this big fight across Metropolis. It was pretty funny. You can see how the people takes a stand against General Zod and sort of fights for them, even though they can't really do anything to Superman. And so Superman realizes this fight isn't going the way. There's no way he can win this fight if he just fighting them, brute strength. So he seemingly runs away, and everyone's calling him a coward. Superman's a coward, and Lois Lane's like, oh my God, Superman. Even Superman isn't able to be Superman right now. But we see that Superman goads General Zod and Lex Luthor into coming to the Fortress of Solitude. And then Superman uses his leverage. Superman uses Lex Luthor basically to save the world, because Lex Luthor is always a lively and conniving guy, and Superman's known for a guy who never lies. But Superman uses this as his advantage, and he tells them that he has this place where he can basically take away his powers. So he tells Lex Luthor that let's get them in this capsule so they can get all their powers gone. And Lex Luthor immediately turns his back on Superman. He's like, yo, don't get in that capsule. Don't listen to Superman. All he wants to do is to take away your superpowers. So they put Superman in the capsule, and then they activate this capsule pod thing. But to their surprise, they were the ones who got changed, and Superman changed it so that if he was the one inside the capsule, he was gonna stay super. The other Kryptonians were gonna get de-Kryptonianized. So that was his big plan, was to use Lex Luthor sort of as his driving force to save the world. And so this was sort of like a masterclass of Superman. This was like one of the coolest Superman ploys or whatever, because there's seemingly nothing he can do, but he uses his sort of wits, and he uses his antagonist, his foil, essentially, to save the planet. So this was sort of great. So Superman takes out General Zod and whatnot, because they're not Superman anymore. There's only one Superman now on the planet, and that's sort of how that ends. But we see at the end that I don't know what happens at the end. Is Superman, Clark Kent comes to Lois Lane and is like, I don't know if this is gonna work out. Like they're talking about their relationship, and Lois Lane's all beat up about it because she was in love, and they were both in love, but they realized their love was sort of superficial and sort of shallow, because once things sort of went south, things weren't the same for any one of them. So Lois Lane fell in love with Superman, and once Superman wasn't super, then it wasn't really what she expected, what she wanted. And Superman realizes this, and I'm not sure what he does. He kisses Lois Lane, and it's like things went back to normal. Or was it because someone walked in, and so it made you, this ending was crazy, because it made you think that Superman used some type of power to brainwipe Lois Lane and to basically reset everything, to make her forget that Clark Kent was Superman. Which I haven't watched 3, so I don't know what exactly happens after this, but that's sort of how it ends. And if you don't watch anything else, then I'm leading myself to believe that he just sort of hit a reset button on Lois Lane, giving himself up to the burden of being Superman. And this was a great theme, a great message throughout the whole film, is that, you know, some of your desires in life may not be what you make it out to be. And you sort of lose yourself in this process, and in the end you realize that you've made this devotion to something, and you come back to it, and you sort of have to leave other stuff that sort of distracted you behind. And that was Superman 2. And that was the best Superman I've watched. I mean, Superman and Lois Lane, their chemistry, she's such a beautiful actress. And, things just didn't work out in this movie. And it was a sad film at the end. This was not a happy Superman film whatsoever. This is sort of like a somber, sad ride throughout the remainder of this movie. And that was the whole vibe to it. And it was just it was a Superman that had such a powerful message, and it hit so hard for me without bastardizing the Superman character like in Man of Steel, or making him like evil Superman or whatnot. So this was just such a great film, and I love this. And I guess I'm gonna watch 3. I know it falls off after this, but I've been keeping up with the series so far. I might as well make a devotion to finishing up these Superman films. So there we are. Superman's one of my favorite characters in recent memory. I fell in love with him because I watched the animated series. So we'll see what happens in these next movies. But yeah, that's what I think about Superman 2. I loved it.